Your sports talk. That's what we're talking about. It's Bob Sansevere and the superstar Mike Morris. Sports Radio 105 The Ticket.
How about those Vikings, huh? How about those Vikings? We are back, and we are joined by Tom Moore from .com. Tom, thanks for joining us, and thanks for doing this.
Thanks, guys, for inviting us to the posh studios of Sports Radio 105 The Ticket. It's great to be here today.
Well, Tom, it sounds good to have you aboard. I don't know how you could possibly have me on your agenda, but I am so ready for this. I've been amped up about this for a week, a little over a week now.
Well, I can't blame you, although I know it would be more exciting for you to have the coach Tom Moore on because I know he's a big fan of yours.
I was going to say, I was going to ask you before the interview started whether or not you were a great offensive mind or if you were a gourmet chef, the way my other Tom Moore in my past.
I'm neither of those, but if you can hook me up with a chef, I'd like to eat his food.
He was good. He was quite a chef, but he liked his football too. And he was very gruff, by the way. I should also mention he was a very stern. He was a very stern football coach. He had it his way, or it was the highway.
And it's probably difficult for a guy like you, so straight-laced, to deal with.
Well, I was, and laces out, by the way.
Absolutely.
Straight-laced and laces out.
Right.
What do you got for me today?
Well, today's going to be an interesting challenge for me today, Mike, because, you see, I usually do a bit of research on each person I interview, and I even watch some game film. So for a guy like Randy Moss, it's easy to ask him about the bomb he caught in the rain in Green Bay on Monday night in 1998. A little harder to ask a Mike Morris to describe snap 1,236 against Detroit in 96. But,
yeah, it really would be.
Yeah, but we're going to give it a shot. We actually recruited 4 of your former Viking teammates to help us with some questions, and those are linebacker Pete Bursich, kicker Floyd Revesz, tight end Brent Novoselsky, and Hall of Fame guard and your former Viking roommate, Randall McDaniel, to help us with some of these questions.
Good. Nice.
So if you're ready to go, I say we get at it.
Run and gun. I'm ready to go.
Just a reminder, this is Tom Moore from VikeFans.com, at VikeFans, interviewing Mike for the website, and we're looking forward to this too, Mike.
And those 4 guys that he just mentioned are 4 really, really close teammates of mine. So I can't wait to hear what they came up with. I'm sure it was great.
Well, before we get started on your own football background, I wanted to get your opinion on the recent NFL Hall of Fame selections. And now that punter Ray Guy has been selected for the Hall, do you think the barrier and stigma has finally been removed for a long snapper to be elected for the league's highest honor? And if so, have the people from Canton called to get your blazer measurements?
Well, that's good. You've started off very well, by the way. This is going to be interesting to see if this does open up the floodgates for special team players of all types. The Steve Taskers, the long snappers too. I mean, long snappers as well. Whether people want to believe it or not, it's not really easy to bend over and snap a football in a football game, especially back when I played, when they could rush you. So I hope that they do open it up. I'd like to see a guy like Steve Tasker or some other guys that I've known in the past who have been great special teams kind of guys. And even a Devin Hester, even though he's not really a wide receiver, for him to be able to go in as a punt return guy or a kick return guy, I think that's important. And they can measure me anytime they want, by the way.
Well, as we delve into your football career, you were a 4-year starter at Northeast Missouri State, which today is known as Truman State. And in 1987, you got a glimpse of how NFL general managers don't always get the scouting right when you went undrafted by all 28 teams in the 12-round draft. That's right. Your chance, Mike, in the NFL would come as a free agent with the Cardinals, who were still in St. Louis at the time. How'd you get that opportunity?
You know what? It's one of those things where you just keep your irons in the fire. You keep preparing. You get knocked off the horse a few times with tryouts and people coming to time you and whatnot. And you're not going to have a great opportunity from Northeast Missouri State now, Truman. But you better make the best of the ones that they do offer up. And so I was out in Arizona at the time. Had a tryout out there with the Arizona Outlaws. And when that almost worked out for me, and I made it on to the last cut. But what happened was the NFL was sending their regional scouts around. I think his name was Bo Bollinger. And he represented the Denver Broncos and the Cardinals and everybody, and they said, let's have him, he wanted to snap me. So I went out to Arizona State, Sun Devil Stadium in Tempe, and he timed me, my snap and my 40 and everything else, and I snapped really well. And he took it back, and Larry Wilson at the time, the Hall of Famer, Larry Wilson was a GM for the Cardinals. Gene Stallings was the head football coach, and they gave me a chance to come into St. Louis and try out, and I made that team and played 13 years from that point on.
Well, I know you played for the Cardinals for a year, which is obviously the big break you were looking for. And the next couple of years, you bounced around the league playing for the Patriots and the Chiefs and the Seahawks and the Browns. Why was it so difficult to find a permanent spot on an NFL roster so early in your career?
Well, it was difficult because number one, the second year that I was with the St. Louis Cardinals, we weren't the St. Louis. We went out to Arizona, and we became the '88 Arizona Cardinals. Or actually, at that time, we were called the Phoenix Cardinals. Went out there, went up to Flagstaff for 2 days, and took an ACL, MCL up in training camp. So from that point on, I was rehabbing and getting my knee done, and it took about 12 months to get that back and on the football field. It went from training camp to training camp. I went from what they used to call Plan B free agency. The Redskins liked what I had done in '87 back in St. Louis, so they picked me up, and I kind of bounced around trying to get back over that knee. And also, you know, it was kind of a tough thing. It was either hit or miss as a long snapper. And if you had a team that really had the need for it, you could stick around. And the Redskins wanted to keep me, but they had to put me on waivers to get the numbers right to re-sign me. And I was taken by the Chiefs. And then the whole thing started all over again. A new playbook, a new coach, a new team, everything. So until I got stabilized here with the Vikings, I did that jumping around for a while. But I didn't miss a game.
Yeah,
didn't miss a game in between there.
Yeah, that's obvious. And you mentioned the Vikings. Finally, in '91, you did find your home in the purple with the Vikings for the next 9 seasons, not just one that you were experiencing. And I was curious from your perspective, what was your experience with then head coach Jerry Burns?
I had a great experience with my 1 year with Coach Burns before he retired. I thought he was the best. It actually was, in fact, the reason that I stuck here. I found a home here, and his assistant coaches at the time were old school coaches, Tom Babbitt, John Michaels, Tom Moore, by the way.
There you go.
And some other people that were they were good, and they understood the special team thing, and I fit in well with the room of offensive linemen that we had here. And things kind of just took off. It just kind of stayed, and I ran 144 straight games. I didn't miss a game.
Now, Mike is being interviewed by Tom Moore of VikeFans.com. The other Tom Moore.
Correct. There you go.
The other Tom Moore.
That's right.
The one that I prefer to talk to ahead of the other one.
I hope he never calls and asks me that question. But, Mike, you know, we talk about Jerry Burns, and he was universally beloved by his players. Why do you think he was not able to have the on-field success that Denny Green did when he came after him?
Jerry Burns was a great coach. He did what he could, and he had a lot of pieces to the puzzle. I think he was just tired of football at the time. A lot of people used to say Burnsy's burnt out. You know, and he just coached for so many years. And on the field, I thought he was well received. If I'm answering your question right, I hope I am. But Denny Green had another way of doing it, and he came in and sort of. It was the new sheriff in town, as we all know. That's what we all had to hear is when he came to town. I'm the new sheriff in town. He had new rules, the new buzzwords, and all the different things that remotivate people, whether they've been there for a long time or not, or young players have just come in. They all buy into it, a new coach. Yeah. Well, they either do or they don't. But we did. And we took off pretty quick with Dennis Green.
Yeah. Well, I know obviously your forte was as a long snapper, but at 291 pounds, you had the size to play regularly on the offensive line. Could you have played center or guard effectively in an NFL regular season game had you been called upon to do so during your career?
I think I could have. Yeah, absolutely. I know I knew what to do, and I wasn't as good as those guys in front of me. Trust me, but. They listed me as a guard center the whole time, and there was no question that those guys that started were the starters, no doubt about it. But I could have come in a pinch and helped out, and I actually did a couple times. And I guess yes is the answer to that.
Okay. When we interviewed Randall McDaniel, he told us he believed that offensive linemen in the NFL today are becoming actually too large. And his point was really that their size was limiting them on executing the more athletic plays. You know, things like sweeps and traps and being able to pull the outside to block for the run. What do you think? Is there a point where the size limits an offensive lineman's capability?
I do. I really do. I think they're getting them almost too big. And, if you can move with it, fine. That's great. If you're Larry Allen, the old left guard for the Dallas Cowboys, he could run. He was maybe the strongest guy I've ever heard of in the National Football League, and he was a great player. He had great pass blocking, ability, and he could do everything. So I would say they are trying to get him too big. Kids that are 320, 330 think they can write their own check in the NFL. Well, yeah, I don't know about that. If you can't move it, you're gonna be off the team.
Yeah. We're gonna come right back with the interview. Tom Moore from VikeFans.com interviewing Mike Morris, the superstar Mike Morris. Coming right back with the rest of that on Sports Radio 105 The Ticket.
Sports Radio 105 The Ticket. And we are back, and we are going to go back to the interview that the superstar Mike Morris is doing with Tom Moore
of VikeFans.com.
All right, Mike. Well, you talked about early in our interview, the fact that people could line up over the center. And in 2010, there was a new rule put in that a defensive player couldn't line up around the center and rush that way for a field goal or a punt, effectively eliminating something known as canning the center. Can you let the folks know what canning the center is, and how often did you experience it in your NFL career?
Well, not only did I experience it all the way through my NFL career, but my college career and my high school career, too. So I was very used to it. That was the way it was played, and I never knew any difference. And you had to snap it. Really super fast. The ball has to vanish out of your hands. And you have to get out of that vulnerable position. And the key to it is, when you're going to bring the snap, and the defensive lineman does not. So you actually know when you're pulling the trigger, and the reaction time that he's going to have is going to be much slower. You have about a half second to get back and to get yourself in a blocking position and protect yourself at the same time. Now, it's not that I haven't been canned before. I have been run over, just flat out run over on field goals. And when they run that double, push from behind on two of the biggest guys in the A gaps, that was pretty hard to stop. All of us got run over. Myself, my two guards, everybody. The Redskins had all those huge guys, Dave Butts, and gosh, they had huge defensive linemen. They had a couple really big linebackers pushing them, and it was hard to keep them out. But to make a long story longer, it's just a matter of hanging in there. Now I think I can go back and do it again right now. No one can touch you for I think a second, but it was dangerous. Yeah, to be completely honest, being run over and to be canned, and if they timed it just right, you felt it on the top of your head, on the back of your neck, and it was dangerous. That's why they had to get rid of it.
I'm sure. Well, we figured out in your career in 13 years, you had over 2,000 snaps, but only like 8 or 10 per game. So you literally had to be perfect on every play when you came in. And the only people ever notice a long snapper is if you make a mistake. So how much stress is that for you when you come in to snap for a game-winning field goal, or if your punter's standing in the back of the end zone waiting for your snap?
Yeah, it really is a lot of pressure, but what makes you a good long snapper is that you have the confidence to do it. They've done it so many times in game situations and in wet weather, rain, snow, whatever the case. You have to put that kind of pressure on yourself before you ever get into a game like that. I used to take footballs and dip them in a bucket of water and throw them that way. I'd get them wet and then throw them. I make them heavier all the time and snap them that way and prepared for it that way in the off season. You had to be ready for that, and you had to focus and really dial in and be. You had to rely on your own confidence that you could do it if you had to climb out of bed and do it right then and there. You had to be able to do that, because to run into a game after, an interception return for a touchdown, there's no time to warm up or snap or do anything else. You got to go in and snap something. So you have to be perfect, and perfect is a pretty tough thing to live up to. But long snappers really are supposed to.
Yeah. Well, was it difficult to transition between punt snapping and snapping for placement kicks? What keeps you from firing a snap over the head of your holder after just snapping for a punt?
Well, everything's different with the release. You snap it completely different with your release on a hold than you would for a punter who's standing 15 yards behind you. But it's coming back pretty crisp. It's coming back really hot. I broke a couple fingers in the NFL. From them catching the ball with lazy fingers, I'd catch their fingertips and it broke them. I broke my dad's hand. He caught punts for me back in high school, and I broke his thumb. But it's just a matter of. But a really good holder can hang on to anything. They truly can. And you should give more credit to those people too. They can hang on to anything. They can snag it from all angles and put it down and let the guy kick it. So I had good people around me all the time. A good holder could do anything.
Well, the broken thumb for your dad is the Father's Day gift that keeps giving, so good luck on that one.
No question. He had a few different words for me than that.
I'll bet. Well, former teammate Pete Bursich tells us that your nickname on the team was the Jailer. Why did they call you that?
I was the jailer because I was kind of like the oldest guy on the team when Pete came in, and it was kind of like a prison system, you know. I was the judge, the jailer, the jury, everything. I had the last say. And we had things called reindeer games, and Pete became one of my henchmen. And I could put him out on a job that I wanted done, a prank or anything else, and I got to a power position in the locker room where I could but I could just tell Pete to go do something for me, and he would. And he just became one of my all-time great henchmen that would help me pull off my dirty work. Long snappers have too much time in the locker room, so you get called a lot of names. I was the jailer.
Okay. Well, on the other side, tight end Brent Novoselsky said he believes you would purposely get thrown out of the scout team drills so you could get out of the practice to go to the Metrodome with the kickers for their practice. Mike, what are scout team drills, and how do you respond to Brent's claims?
Well, you know what, they called me Captain Cardboard too. I was really good at those practice team, the scout plays and whatnot, but. Yeah, Tommy Bata would pull me out of practice and take me down to the dome with the kickers and the punters, and we get our work done down there. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun. I hate Brent Novoselsky for saying that. I want his number after we're done with this interview so I can call him up and give him a piece of my mind. But he's just a funny guy, and he was a great special team player. I feel bad. His career was cut short with a neck injury that we lost a good special team player when he had to get out of the game.
Well, the good news is he's living in Chicago and still bleeds purple, so he obviously follows the team. And you know, many of your other Viking teammates, they kept on talking to me about believing that your locker was the gateway to the underworld. And we understand that linebacker Mike Merriweather apparently kept trying to exorcise his demons. What was going on with the locker, Mike?
Well, you know, Mike thought that I was the devil. Mike Merriweather thought I was the devil. I had lights, I had bats, I had skulls in my locker, I had a Megadeth poster in there, I had what I called the wall of shame. I'd take newspaper clippings out of the newspapers and stick them up in my locker, and they weren't like the best stories you'd want to read in USA Today, but I'd put them up there just to give perspective of what we're living in. It truly was the underworld, and Mike used to be bothered by it because he was always trying to straighten me up, but he never really got it done.
And have you seen Merriweather since the two of you retired?
I have. I did a signing session with Mike probably 4 or 5 years ago at the Mall of America. Yeah. He walked up to him and he said, "Tell me you've changed. Tell me you've fixed it." And I had to report to him that I had not. So he got a laugh out of it. He got a chuckle out of that. But I used to ride in on my motorcycle, climb off, have chains hanging all over me. Sanford, you know this, right? I mean, I did. I'd walk in there and take over the locker room. Had too much time, way too much time. But those guys, they were the best in the business. Novoselsky, by the way, flew in from Chicago to my retirement party at my house. It was a surprise party. He flew in and was there for my retirement party. These are good guys you're talking to.
And this is Mike is talking to Tom Moore from VikeFan.com about his career. Tom, you're doing a great job with it. Keep on going.
All right. Well, Randall McDaniel was your training camp roommate for 5 years, and he remembers you taking hundreds of toy soldiers to camp. What was that all about, and how did Randall treat the soldiers?
Well, it was a terrible thing. You know what he did. It wasn't a terrible thing what I did. I had a fascination with the military, still do, and I had a lot of toy soldiers, and I used to love to set them up in combat situations and line them up, you know, with wire, everything. I had mines, I had minesweepers, I had jeeps, tanks, you name it, Tom. I had everything. And Randall would just sit there and sort of be in amazement by the hundreds of them that I had on the floor in the dorm room. And he would just take socks and launch them into the middle and blow the whole thing up after it took me, 45 minutes to set them up. And that would piss me off. But there was nothing you could do about it because Randall, you can't do anything to Randall.
Yeah,
you can't kick his rear end because, and by the way, before he would wreck those, Tony Dungy was usually the guy that would walk around and check all the rooms. When he walked in there, Tony thought, "What are you doing? What are you?" Just every night, "What's the deal tonight?" And he would turn around and walk out of the room after curfew, shaking his head like, Kind of like Mike Merriweather.
Yeah.
What's wrong with Morris?
Well, it sounds like the whole event was the precursor to the video game Call of Duty.
Yeah, it was. I was really the first guy.
Yeah, there you go.
The first one. I set that whole format up.
And you get no residuals for it.
We should talk about that.
Exactly.
If we can get someone with the copyright, I'd like to go back and argue for some of that.
Sure. Well, Randall also wanted you to tell your listeners how he would make sure you woke up in time for meetings when you guys were on the road to play a game.
Yeah, it was actually for games. Yeah, actually for games. He would just pick my mattress up, whatever hotel we were staying in, and he'd just launch me out of my bed. He would just pick it up and just shove me out onto the floor, and he'd say, "Let's go play a game, old man," every Sunday. "Let's go play, old man."
Give him credit. It must have worked.
I'd get up, pull myself up onto my feet from the floor of the hotel. And, of course, by the time that he had done that to me, he'd already been up since 4:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock, having his first of 2 pots of coffee. That's something you should know about McDaniel. Yeah. And then he would walk down, and if he didn't wake me up by shoving me out of my bed, off by my mattress by picking me up, he would blow up an enormous balloon and pop it right next to my ear. But there, you had that going for you.
Yeah, it's nice to have good teammates.
All right, good friends. Good friends.
Well, this is a question that really takes you to the offensive side of the ball. And during your time with Minnesota, the Vikings seem to change quarterbacks every year, sort of like they do now. Of the 9 quarterbacks you played with, who was the one you thought was the most capable to lead the team?
My gosh. I mean, wow. We had some of the really great quarterbacks from different teams in league history in some ways. Warren Moon being one of those, Randall Cunningham, Jim McMahon. I mean, we had a slew of them. Rich Gannon. Yeah. I don't know. I suppose we got about 4 or 5 really good years out of Warren Moon, where he went to the Pro Bowl every year. He's in the Hall of Fame. That guy, he had his own way of leading a football team. I would have to say that he was the most stable of all the Viking quarterbacks that I had in my 9 years here. But he was so stable. He was such a cool customer. But Randall Cunningham had that one season that was just unbelievable.
Absolutely. We're going to come right back with Tom Moore from VikeFans.com and the superstar Mike Morris to conclude their interview for VikeFans.com right here on Sports Radio 105 The Ticket. We are back, and we are going to conclude the interview. VikeFans.com, Tom Moore interviewing the superstar Mike Morris. And that, now, Tom, people will be able to listen to this both on our podcast, and you have a permanent podcast with a number of former Vikings on it, do you not?
That's correct. We've actually interviewed over 20 former Vikings, a few from the 2013 squad, and a lot of members of the media. They're all available in our archive, our article archive on VikeFans.com. You can also get there on VikeFans.net.
Well,
okay.
Hit it.
Well, Mike, 1998 was a dream season for the Vikings until the end came all too sudden in the NFC Championship game against the Falcons. You were there. What was the confidence shift in the team when Robert Smith got injured and Gary Anderson missed his only field goal of the season?
Well, it was incredible. I mean, we talk about it even to this day. I mean, in sports radio, it comes up almost every year, and whenever Vikings history comes up and some of the great teams come up, that game always comes up. You know, the Atlanta game, and although Robert wasn't, I don't think he was actually injured. I don't believe he was ever injured. I don't remember that. But, of course, there was a field goal, and Robert Smith ran out of bounds a couple times, and just things that you probably, wouldn't expect him to do would be to run out of bounds and not run some of the time off the clock. But the field goal was just incredible to me, and it was not the reason that we lost that game by any means, okay? There were so many ways that we didn't get that job done. He was the only reason that we were there anyway. Right. I mean, it was because of Gary Anderson that we had, a home field advantage throughout the playoffs. And he was an incredible kicker. I've never seen anybody kick like him, and I've snapped to a slew of great kickers, but he was fantastic. And that ball just kept trailing left, and he hit it really good, and it was down the middle. It went right over the top of me, and I watched it just draw a little bit to the left and just outside that left upright.
Yeah. Is that a slow motion moment for you? I mean, do you look up and it seems to just never get there?
It really was. To be honest, I didn't go down. I mean, we didn't fall or anything. The pile up didn't fall. I mean, we were able to stand up right after we snapped it and kicked it. So I stood there and watched it, and it did just seem forever. And I'm like, you're giving it the body English and everything, trying to bring it back into the middle of the goalpost, and it's not happening. And now looking back on it, it's super slow motion.
Yeah.
When I think about it now, it's just like one frame at a time.
Well, most of us don't look back on it, so that's the good thing. We just have the memory. We'll kind of leave that alone until we get our championship eventually here in a couple years.
We're going to get it.
Yeah. Well, obviously in 1999, you played your final season, and you were released after the 99 season by Denny Green. Did you see it coming, and how did you learn about being cut from your job of 9 years?
Well, I wasn't cut. If I'm correct anyway, what happened was I got released during training camp, and he brought me back 2 days later. And I played that contract out. I didn't have a contract after that. I probably could have played some more, but there were some issues where I talked an awful lot about some of the things that I disagreed with that had happened with the Vikings and the team, and more specifically with the teammates that I had played with. That being Randall McDaniel and Jeff Christie, being carted off to Tampa Bay, and following Tony down there, and they both, by the way, started the Pro Bowl the next year, or that particular season that they went down to Tampa. So I had my moment, I guess, on radio, where maybe I was a little more too outspoken, and I'm sure that the word got back, and they were going to have it. So anyway, it was time to get out. Anyway, I really was thinking and pondering retirement. It's better to get out a year early than a year late, based on injuries, and I was able to walk away fairly healthy. And I kind of think that's where we ended it, kind of with that conversation I had on radio. But I did play that contract out. I had no more games on contract.
Okay. When you look back at your entire 9-year career with the Vikings, what's the funniest thing you ever saw, either in a Viking locker room or a practice field?
That is the absolute impossible question. I was pulling pranks for 9 years straight in that locker room, and some of those guys were helping. And we had a whole crew down there. You had to understand, our team was made up of characters that were so funny and so likable. They were just great characters. The whole team was just made up of a ton of them. And to pinpoint any of those instances of our little reindeer games would be almost impossible. I really can't put a finger on it. I just know that those guys took their football extremely serious and practiced hard and played hard. But when we got away from football and we were in the locker room, we were always able to have a good time in the locker room and just horse around. And I just can't put any one moment together for you.
Well, it sounds like there's enough moments we should expect a book sometime in the future.
Maybe I should do it that way.
There you go.
Maybe that would be a better way to tell it. And but trust me, it was fun because of the guys on that team, and they were all cut-ups. They really were. From Corey Stringer to McDaniel to Stussy to Christie, the list goes. Pete Bursich, all those guys. They were great guys.
Well, Mike, most people know your love for strength training, and you continue to train many people at your Milo Barbell Club. In fact, Randall McDaniel and Matt Burke both credit your strength training techniques with helping them become strong enough to play long-term in the NFL. So it made me wonder if you ever wanted to be a bodybuilder or an Olympic weightlifter as opposed to a football player.
No, I didn't. I really didn't. I loved lifting as much as I loved football, but I loved the preparation and getting ready for football. It was the getting ready part that I really enjoyed the most. Was year-round training and and lifting. And I had a great start at the age of 13. My uncle, who had lifted all the way through the 30s and 40s, actually taught me how to lift weights, and I fell in love with it early. But I knew I wanted to play football. There was no question that I wanted to play football. That was all I lived and slept and ate was football down in southern Iowa and playing football in the backyard with my brother Pat. So the strength part of it, it was good to me. That's the only reason I stayed in the league as long as I did, and the only reason I made it, period, was that I worked so hard on the strength part of it because I was a very, very, I don't know how, one-dimensional player. I could do one thing extremely well. But to say that I was a great football player, I was good in high school and college, but I wasn't going to be a starter, a bona fide starter, I don't think. If I would have been a starter, I would have had to been on the defensive side of the ball, I think. Maybe I could have tried as a defensive end and been a little bit different guy. But offensive line, the best guys were playing, trust me.
Well, we're pleased that you went with the football helmet because if we went to the bodybuilding, I didn't want to see you in a Speedo. So that worked out well for the fans.
Come on, man. You're crushing me with that. You wouldn't want to see just a sneak peek, a glimpse, or I don't blame you.
We'll let the ladies decide that. But, Mike, as we round this out and we look at the last part of our conversation today, we've got simply a rapid-fire session where I'll give you one word, and we're looking for a one-word or one-sentence response from you. And to give you an example, back when we interviewed Fuad Revesz, he got your name and he got Greg Minuski's name, which he replied in unison, nuts and completely nuts, if that gives you an idea of what we're looking for. So if you're ready for that, I'm going to give you some names of former teammates.
Okay, let's go.
All right, Mitch Berger.
Imbecile.
Okay. Gary Anderson.
Precise.
John Randall.
Maniac.
Rich Gannon.
Professor.
Anthony Carter.
Fluid.
Robert Smith.
Doctor.
Henry Thomas.
Tenacious.
Okay, here's your payback time. Fuad Revesz.
This is. I should probably describe him in one way only, and that was. I'll say wrestler.
Okay, and we know the story because we've talked to him, Randall McDaniel, and John Randall about it.
I just have to ask you then. I'm going to interview you. What did John Randall say about that?
John Randall, he was almost embarrassed when he responded to it, but he did admit. At first, he said that Fuad snuck up on him, and then he admitted that he was the instigator of the whole thing. And Fuad took him down twice.
Fuad. Yeah, and Fuad. I've never seen anything like it. Fuad was a fantastic kicker. He hit 31 field goals in a row to have the record at that time. But what people will never know about Fuad is he was about 235, 240 pounds, and he was a great wrestler in high school.
Well,
he put John Randall on his back in the locker room after Johnny jumped him.
Yep.
And then Johnny ran off to the field house and sort of pouted about it, and had another inkling to go do it again when everyone came out for practice to start. Yep. And Fuad pinned him again. And it was the kicker pinned the Hall of Fame defensive tackle. And he could, I'll say wrestler. I'll leave it at that.
Absolutely. I've got two more for you. Leroy Horde.
The everlasting mouth. Let's see, that's 3 words. Woodpecker.
Okay. And that may need some explanation, quite frankly.
Just constantly, just like knocking on, just that constant talk. That conversation was never ending. It reminded me of like a woodpecker just irritating everyone with that rattling off the wood. Because no one could put up with it after about a day. You have to go home and get relief from Leroy Horde. Great athlete, though.
And now he's a sports radio talk show host, so that's great.
Well, trust me, there will never be dead air.
And our final person today is Robert Griffith.
Pound for pound. Hitter.
Okay.
Greatest hitter I've ever been played with, pound for pound. He could take your helmet off. He really could. For no bigger than he was, I'll say hitter for him.
Well, Mike, we appreciate you taking the time to share your memories with the Viking fans, and wanted to ask you if you had any closing thoughts you might have about the Minnesota Vikings or their fans.
Well, to my fan base and to you people specifically, thank you for doing this and making it a very unique moment for me on this radio show on 105 The Ticket. So thank you for doing this. And there's a bright day down the road very shortly for the Minnesota Viking fans.
Great.
It started with when they hired Mike Zimmer and put Norv Turner in as the offensive coordinator. There's going to be a beautiful stadium, second to none, in 3 years here in this town. And we're going to have some fun. One of these days, it's going to come around full circle, and we're going to get that ring.
Great, and I want to encourage all our VikeFans.com fans to call Mike and Bob and ask them what their questions are as we go forward with the Vikings for 2014 and beyond on Sports Radio 105, The Ticket.
Tom, you did a great job. Tom Moore from VikeFans.com. That was 45 minutes, and it flew by.
It was fun. That was fun.
I'm glad we did this.
A walk down memory lane. That was a lot of fun. Thank you, Tom.
You bet. Thank you, guys.
All right, Tom, take care. We're going to have actually the guy that you know quite well, Matt Burke, coming up just in just a few minutes. He can add to former Viking, Super Bowl champion, author. He's now an author.
Was there any doubt that he was capable of doing that?
Oh, I wonder if he's wearing those the jacket with the patches on the sleeves now.
Sort of what do they call them? At Harvard, they call them the fellows, or what's the name for them?
Professor? Muckety Mucks.
Yeah, I don't know.
Fellow?
He's a fellow.
Yeah.
He's a fellow now. He's got the patches on the... Yeah, for sure.
A hail good fellow, whatever it is. We're going to come right back with Matt Burke right here on Sports Radio 105 The Ticket.